Chapter 11, Part 2. The Magician. Hugo finished putting on his tuxedo. He rubbed the buttons and admired how smooth and shiny they were. Catching his reflection in the mirror, he stared for a moment. He thought that he looked almost grown up. The Méliès had emptied out a small storage room in the back of their apartment, and now that room belonged to Hugo. The French Film Academy, through the intervention of René Tabard, arranged for money to be given to the Méliès family, and some of the money went to finishing Hugo's room. There was a small workbench at the one end, and it was covered with little mechanical creatures made out of clockworks and magic tricks of all shapes and sizes, which Hugo had made himself. The school year had begun again, and Hugo had a desk for doing homework. His shelves were covered in books, and he had many souvenirs from the Paris World's Fair, which he and Isabel had attended a month earlier. His father's notebook was safe inside a box in his bedside table. His floor was littered with drawings. He had a little drawer just for the ticket stubs of the movies he and Isabel saw together. In the darkness of a new cinema that opened in a nearby neighborhood, Hugo was able to travel backward through time and see dinosaurs and pirates and cowboys, and he saw the future with robots and cities so gigantic they blocked out the sky. He flew in airplanes and crossed oceans in ships. In the dark of the movie theater, he first saw jungles, oceans, and deserts. He wanted to visit them all in real life. In one corner of the room stood the automaton, which Hugo and Papa Georges had repaired to perfection. Hugo stuffed his pockets with little magic tricks and cards, as he usually did, chucked his railroad watch, and knocked on Isabel's door. She opened the door wearing a white dress that seemed to glow. In the living room, Georges Méliès had on a tuxedo with his black celestial cape, which had been lovingly mended and cleaned by his wife, and was now as bright and colorful as the day it was made, and she wore a dress that sparkled like water. Etienne soon arrived, wearing a beautiful black tuxedo and a brand-new eye patch. Hugo picked up the invitation that lay on the table. The French Film Academy invites you to join us for an evening celebrating the life and work of cinema legend Georges Méliès. Two gleaming motor cars pulled up to the doors of their apartment building, and everyone headed outside. "Oh, my camera," said Isabel. "I almost forgot." She raced back to her room and got the black and silver camera her godparents had given her for her birthday. "Will you carry some extra film for me tonight?" she asked Hugo as she handed him the rolls, which he stuffed into his pocket. "And I've been meaning to give this to you." She then handed Hugo a photo she had taken of him with his friends Antoine and Louis. They had their arms around one another's necks, and they were laughing. "Thanks," said Hugo. He smiled and slipped it into his jacket pocket. Isabel adjusted the camera and the key on its chain around her neck so they hung properly. Outside, the drivers helped them into cars, and off they sped to the Film Academy. "It's been a very long time since I've been here," said the old man as they neared their destination. "Maybe I'll ask to see the picture of Prometheus I painted when I was young." "You painted that picture, Papa Georges?" said Hugo, amazed. "I thought it was a Prometheus. I saw it in the library." "It's still hanging? That's good news. You know the myth, then?" The children told him that they did. "Then you know Prometheus was rescued in the end. His chains were broken, and he was finally set free." The old man squinted one of his eyes and added, "How about that?" Once everyone was seated in the theater, Monsieur Tabard went to the podium. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he said. "My name is René Tabard, and I will be your host for this evening. We have gathered here tonight to honor one of our pioneers, Georges Méliès, who brought magic to the movies. For years his films were believed to be lost. Indeed, Monsieur Méliès himself was believed to be gone. But we have a most wonderful surprise for the world. Monsieur Méliès is here tonight, and not all of his films were destroyed. Thanks to the diligence of one of the students here, Etienne Pouchon, with help on weekends from Hugo and Isabel, two brave children who are being raised by Monsieur and Madame Méliès, we were We went back and checked one last time, starting with one film that we found in our basement. Etienne, Hugo, and Isabel searched through vaults and long-closed archives. They took trips to private collections and such strange places as barns and catacombs, where their work was richly rewarded. They found old negatives, boxes of prints, and trunks full of decaying film, which they were able to save. We now have in our possession over 80 films by Monsieur Méliès, a small fraction of the 500 he produced, but I am confident that in years to come even more of his movies will resurface. Tonight, Georges Méliès, my boyhood hero, is being rediscovered. Now sit back, open your eyes, and be prepared to dream. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the world of Georges Méliès. The audience cheered and applauded. The lights went down and the orchestra began to play as the curtains opened. Film by film, Georges's world was projected on screen for the first time in over a decade. So, here's an actual still photo of the real film that he produced. And there's another one. Looks like a castle with snow. And then the last film shown was A Trip to the Moon. Hugo looked at Isabel. Tears were running down her cheeks in two thin, glimmering lines. The lights came up, and the man of honor was then invited up on the stage, where he was given a gold laurel wreath to wear as a crown. He stepped to the podium and said to the audience in a proud, emotion-filled voice, "As I look out on all of you gathered here, I want to say that I don't see a room full of Parisians in top hats and diamonds and silk dresses. I don't see bankers and housewives and store clerks. No, I address you all tonight as you truly are, wizards, mermaids, travelers, adventurers, and magicians. You are the true dreamers." After the gala had ended, they all went to a small party in his honor at a nearby restaurant. Isabel took photographs of the entire night, and Hugo sat at a table doing magic tricks. A rather sizable crowd soon gathered around Hugo. Georges Méliès walked over to where Hugo was sitting, put his hand on Hugo's shoulder, and said to everyone, "I want you all to remember this moment. I believe this is the first public performance ever given by Professor Alcofrisbus." Hugo looked up and asked, "Who is Professor Alcofrisbus?" "You are, my boy. Professor Alcofrisbus was a character who appeared in many of my films, sometimes as an explorer, sometimes as an alchemist, a person who can turn anything into gold. But mostly he was a magician, and now he has appeared in real life, right here in this very room." In that moment, the machinery of the world lined up. Somewhere a clock struck midnight, and Hugo's future seemed to fall perfectly into place. Chapter 12, the last chapter, winding it up. Time can play all sorts of tricks on you. In the blink of an eye, babies appear in carriages, coffins disappear into the ground, wars are won and lost, and children transform like butterflies into adults. That's what happened to me. Once upon a time, I was a boy named Hugo Cabret, and I desperately believed that a broken automaton would save my life. Now that my cocoon has fallen away and I have emerged as a magician named Professor Alcofrisbus, I can look back and see that I was right. The automaton my father discovered did save me, but now I have built a new automaton. I've spent countless hours designing it. I made every gear myself, carefully cut every brass disc, and fashioned every last bit of machinery with my own hands. When you wind it up, it can do something I'm sure no other automaton in the world can do. It can tell you the incredible story of Georges Méliès, his wife, their goddaughter, and a beloved clockmaker whose son grew up to be a magician. The complicated machinery inside my automaton can produce 158 different pictures, and it can write, letter by letter, an entire book, 26,159 words. These words. hope you love this book as much as I did. I hope you love the drawings.